the presidential complex, and we will be asking many questions to Mr. President Tayyip Erdoğan. Thank you very much for joining us. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Thank you.
Of course, there are so many things that people would like to find out more about. SİTA General Coordinator Burhanettin Duran will also be joining us with his questions, and from Sabah Daily, Okan Müderrisoğlu will also be with us. Hello once again. Mr. President, now our viewers are also curious about many topics. Likewise, we as journalists are quite curious about certain things. A short while ago, you had a telephone conversation with President Trump, and this is the first thing that we would like to ask you. We as journalists, we are always on the lookout for headlines, but we will be asking you this question shortly. But especially, we would like to ask you about coronavirus, which is a huge problem across the globe. Let's start with that, shall we? The entire world is trying to battle coronavirus, but Turkey has taken steps from the very beginning of this process. And compared to other countries, many other countries, Turkey has stood out in terms of its attitude towards this crisis. So first of all, let me ask you the main steps that Turkey took, and what were the main reasons why Turkey became so successful, and what further precautions are going to be taken from now on. Those aged above 65 and below 18 are also quite curious as to how things will evolve in the next couple of days.
First of all, let us call this the coronavirus predicament. Such an outbreak has not only affected Turkey, but the whole world, as you know. And there are various issues relevant to it. There are many harms many countries have had to endure. The USA, Russia, China, many countries have seen a lot of impacts of it. And in terms of, for example, unemployment in countries such as the US, the figure stands at about 45 million. These are not ordinary figures. And in Turkey, thank God, once we review our condition, in the first quarter we are the #1 in the world, and we have achieved a ratio of 4.5% of growth, and despite all the efforts, of course, we have been exerting in the field of economy, and also we have been continuing with our fight against terrorism. And for combating the virus, the outbreak, we have sent many medical aid, pieces of medical aid materials to many countries, over 100 countries, including face masks. And for us, we have always set targets for ourselves. One of them is what I call my love, the city hospitals project. The Pine and Cherry Blossom Hospital is one of the greatest city hospitals of Turkey.
And also these pictures are from these hospitals on the screen. Başakşehir.
Yes. Now we, on the screen, see Başakşehir Cham and Sakura City Hospital, Pine and Cherry Blossom City Hospital. This hospital has been finalized on the basis of BOT. This is a full-fledged hospital. You can see the state-of-art technologies, starting from tomographies to the MR machines, from the ultrasound machines, state-of-art machines, and to other devices, triage, and many other, of course, activities, facilities, many waiting rooms, of course, places for the hospital attendants accompanying persons, and we have also continuing with deforestation activities around the vicinities of the hospital. For example, Sakura, the cherry blossom, lasts only for 15 days, but it has colors, specific colors. For example, it preserves its green color, and we compensate for that with the pine trees across the facility area. We have organized the hospital in such a fashion, and the Ministry of Health has been putting up a lot of efforts to address all the needs of the hospital. We now have taken another step forward. We call this the health tourism. What is health tourism? We need to do something else, we said to ourselves. We have an airport located in Yeşilköy district of Istanbul, and we made a promise to our nation that we wanted to convert it to a people's garden. But on the other hand, we said to ourselves, we need to convert a part of this facility, these premises into a city hospital. And we made a promise to complete the construction process in only 45 days, and we have converted it into a single-story hospital with a capacity of 1,008 beds. And the contracting company made promises, and they did not only, of course, made promises, but said they will be assuming the responsibility of meeting the costs of one of the hospitals, because this hospital came in two different phases, two structures mainly. And another hospital is in Sancaktepe. It is, again, a hospital with a capacity of 1,008 beds. But we also had a promise before. We had made a promise to build a city hospital. We built, for that reason, the Pakize Öz City Hospital. All family members of the late Öz are healthcare professionals, all doctors, and they themselves had the chance to visit the hospital, and they appreciate it much. And at that hospital, we had 16 operation theaters and dialysis machines. And these rooms of the hospital can be converted into ICUs if desired. Murat Dilmener is a Doyen professor, and he used to work at Chapa Hospital, and unfortunately we lost many healthcare professionals, including the professor I mentioned right now, due to coronavirus, and we are at ease that we named these hospitals after such crucial, valuable figures. And their students gave us a lot of calls, thanked, extended their gratitudes. And Cemil Taşçıoğlu's name was given, has been given to the Ok Meydanı Hospital. Professor Taşçıoğlu is also was also from the same hometown as me. I did not know that before, but I have come to learn about it later on, that we were coming from, indeed, the same town. And in Hadımköy district, there is another hospital which has recently been constructed, and Professor Kurtulmuş's name was given to it, and he is the father of Numan Bey, a colleague of mine. So this hospital in Hadımköy has been named after him. So we have been expanding the scope of these city hospitals, and with the most recent recently inaugurated hospitals, we now have 11 city hospitals operational in the country. Of course, these are directly linked to the airports. It will be making these locations very popular for health tourism. For example, Yeşilköy district, the aircrafts will land, and it's only 5 minutes of drive from the airport to the hospital, and people will land and then present to the hospitals and have their treatment and leave. If they have arrived in the country with, for example, air ambulances, then they will leave accordingly. Or if they are on scheduled flights, then they will also have the chance to visit the hospital very quickly. This will trigger further activities in the healthcare tourism because this will also compensate for what we have maybe potentially lost in seasonal services. Now we have started receiving patients from other countries, for example, and this will give further speed to further activities to come forward.
Now, in the last 18 years, many investments went into healthcare. I know that you take city hospitals very seriously. In our fight against coronavirus, these city hospitals played a very important role, just like you have summarized. In terms of Pine and Sakura Hospital, even the roads that lead to that hospital were actually constructed based on your instructions.
And there we need to mention another important issue. Istanbul municipality, metropolitan municipality, we used to be the mayor. I used to hold the office back in time, but now the municipality has been administrated by the very well-known mentality, and they have, for that reason, not been engaged in many necessary activities. But still, I gave instructions to the Ministry of Transportation, and they, in only a month, did construct roads that lead to the area, and a metro, a subway, will be constructed, and it will be running directly to the hospital area. So it will be very easy for our citizens to commute and go back and forth, because this is what becomes Istanbul. That's why we will not stop, but always be marching on our path.
Now, you insist on the importance of wearing masks, and there are restrictions above the age of 65, but they have some expectations. Do you have any message for them?
Let me just first answer these questions so that I wouldn't forget the answers for them. These 3 issues, these are of importance: masks, distancing, and cleaning hygiene. I would like to make a call to my dear people. Please be very careful about these 3 matters. First of all, masks. No matter where you are, especially in indoor areas, please wear your face masks. The second thing is the physical distancing, 1.5 meters at least. We need to be socially distant. And the third thing is hygiene. When we touch somewhere, we should definitely and immediately wash our hands or sanitize or use some sanitizers and disinfect somehow. We should definitely do these so that no trouble will come our way. And we should not disregard these 3 measures. Because if we comply with these measures properly, I believe in a very short period of time we will be curbing this outbreak. And my brothers and sisters over the age of 65 will not be seeing any negative impacts of it. And there's another age group, as you know, 18 and under. It used to be 20 and under, We now, as you know, have a single group, 18 and under, but still young people should also be very careful and should not say, I'm already young and nothing bad will happen to me. They should be very careful. On the weekends especially, you know, you can see the parks or the streets or some celebrations made on the streets, some being sent to serve for military, and friends and family celebrating and sending them off. Yes, these are some events for people to celebrate, but these are not necessary right now, and this is a serious virus, and it is important to listen to what the professors from the scientific boards reiterate. They underline the importance of masks, hygiene, and social distancing.
You said previously that if these rules are not observed, even stricter rules could be launched. This is very important, I believe.
Of course. Now that we have eased on certain measures, it does not mean we have relaxed everything to the full extent. Now we have the figures for today. Now we have about 989 cases, new cases today registered. We have 19 fatalities, and in the intensive care units we have 625 people. Of course, this is still a high figure. We wouldn't want to see so many people. We hope the figure will fall, and the patients connected to ventilators is 261. We, of course, want to bring this figure further down. The number of the recovered people, of course, is 3,411. This is pleasing to see, and the number of the tests performed today only is over 39,000. But of course, the fatalities is an important issue. It's important to bring it down to zero, the death toll.
Compared to other countries, from the very beginning, we have seen 15%, and it was only 2.7% in Turkey. So death rates have always been low in Turkey.
We rank the 11th in the world, and we are in a good position in terms of our ranking. And I shared these figures with Mr. Trump tonight, and he was a bit surprised indeed to see so good figures.
When the fight against coronavirus started, certain people in Turkey feared that Turkey would be like Italy, the UK, or Spain, or they tried to stoke fears. As you said previously, when you invested in healthcare, it was based on a long-term vision. You attached great importance to healthcare tourism, for instance, but of course our healthcare system is geared towards our own citizens first and foremost. Turkey became one of the leading nations in the world in terms of fighting against coronavirus. What would you say to those who try to stoke fears about coronavirus in Turkey and said that Turkey would be like Italy or Spain?
If you remember, when we were on our path of politics, we said certain things. We said we will bring Turkey on the rise on four main pillars: education, health, justice, and security. This was what we said before. And on those four main pillars, we placed transportation. And on top of it, we added agriculture as well as foreign politics. And those four pillars have been of great importance for us along the way. For the educational activities, we indeed ensured that all cities of our country have universities. 81 provinces. Now we have increased the number of universities over 200, even though it was much lower when we took office. And hospitals, on the other hand, in the field of health, for example. We have built state-of-art hospitals, and the drugs are delivered to people free of charge. Can you get medication, drugs free of charge in Italy or in Germany? Probably not. But now we do provide drugs to our citizens free of charge. When Mr. Kemal was the chairperson of the Social Security institution of the country, let alone delivering drugs to people free of charge or having them reimbursed, people were not even able to purchase the drugs prescribed for them by the doctors, by their physicians. And now we have offered the means to our citizens for them to purchase the drugs they need from any pharmacy they want to. So this is indeed a reflection of our principle, which says there's nothing in life more precious than happiness, and there's no greater happiness than a healthy breath of life. So if you are not able to deliver all those, then it means you fall short. Interestingly enough, I don't remember what country it was, but I saw that the people lost their lives. The people who lost their lives were put in some plastic bags. We should not mention maybe the name of the country, but once you have a look at the number of the cases in our country and the ratio of the fatalities to the total number of cases, it's only around 2% in our country. In France, for example, it is 18%. But when you listen to them, you would see that they have been put on airs. But it is clear to see for everyone, 1 out of every 18 citizens lost their lives in France, and it has been much different on the other hand for our country, and we do not make any indiscrimination among our citizens. We do deliver our drugs to our people, the medication necessary for our people free of charge, because this is our responsibility to shoulder, and we will continue to shoulder so. What you said is of great importance. If you are the president of the country or the prime minister or an incumbent of the country, you have the responsibility to assume, and you will be held accountable for any act you are to commit. So this is how we have been trained indeed, have learned our manners. We cannot just ignore even a single person in remote parts of the country, for example. And let me reiterate another thing. Two Siamese twins. Who need treatment. They need surgery. They're connected to one another by their heads. And in the UK, a doctor gave them a treatment, operated on them, and we shared all the images with many of the physicians from our country, and they asked those two children, asked them to be brought over to the UK. The doctor was from Kashmir, but two doctors, two physicians from our country also visited. Dr. Jelani, by the way, was his name, and two doctors from our country also attended to the operation. A team of 42 people did perform the operation, and thank God those kids, those children of ours have been successfully operated on, and as far as I am concerned, it has been of enough time for them to come back to Turkey, maybe in 15 days, maybe in a month. Now, I also follow them on Instagram. I see their videos, their posts. I see that they're playing with their parents. Now, they're separated, and their reactions are really interesting to see. But this is how we acted on. We took steps with good intentions. I'll be bringing to a specific point. A Turkish indeed person and a physician from Kashmir, they said they were willing to assume responsibility. What I'm trying to say is that when you have good intentions, the final result will be of always good deeds. So this way we have had their children of ours operated on successfully. So what I'm trying to say is this is what the Republic of Turkey is like. All the citizens of this country are well represented, and we stand for and with each and every citizen of this country.
Mr. President, you made a comparison with Europe. There are grave examples in Europe. Elderly people were left to die in care homes, or physicians had to pick patients and decide who to live and who to let go. At the beginning of our interview, you talked about city hospitals and how important they are in our fight against coronavirus. We have a brief video that we prepared. Let's watch it together and then discuss.
We'll take a break there and just recap quickly. That is, of course, a TRT Haber. That's TRT News in Turkish, our sister station, interviewing President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan there, speaking mostly in that first part about Turkey's management of the coronavirus crisis. Now, the global coronavirus count now exceeds 7 million. There are more than 403,000 people around the world who've died from the disease. Over 3.1 million have been successfully treated and recovered. Now, here in Turkey, the government has recently begun to ease restrictions. Our diplomatic correspondent Hasan Abdullah has the latest.
The Turkish government says its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic has been an international success story. It says Turkey has fared far better than many countries with the most advanced healthcare systems. So far, some 170,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19. 4,700 or so have died so far. But the health ministry says the recovery rate has been high. Some 138,000 people have recovered so far. That's more than 80% of the people who tested positive for COVID-19. The government here says it was well prepared from the start. It ensured there was no shortage of personal protection equipment. In fact, there was a surplus, to the point that the Turkish Foreign Ministry says it provided medical support to more than 100 countries. Currently, the government says it's focused on creating jobs, and it has been providing a relief package worth some $38 billion to people. So far, some 4 million households have been provided financial assistance. The government here says it's closely monitoring the situation and adjusting its policy accordingly.
Our diplomatic correspondent Hasan Abdullah reporting there from Ankara. Now, Turkey has entered a phase of what it's calling the new normal. There's been an easing of restrictions with restaurants, malls, and parks reopening. Intercity travel and domestic flights have resumed, but there are still some restrictions. Turkey wants its citizens to wear masks in public, maintain social distancing, and practice good hygiene. Since the new normal process has been implemented, Turkey's reporting of new cases has remained relatively stable. Let's take a look at some of those numbers now. To date, Turkey has recorded 171,000 cases of COVID-19. Of that number, more than 4,700 people have died. More than 141,000 people have recovered. So, right, those are the numbers that Turkey is, in a sense, or actually, no, we will return to Ankara now and rejoin that interview with President Erdoğan.
making gowns out of bin liners. We talked about city hospitals. What would your last words be about this topic?
Şu Elazığ depreminde yani Fethi Sekin hastanesi olmamış olsaydı
During the Elazığ earthquake, for example, Fethi Seki City Hospital came very handy. Without it, we would have been crushed under the rubbles, so to speak. But that day of the earthquake, we faced no trouble and have our patients referred to the hospital, and without any issue, what was necessary was done. If the patient was going to be an outpatient, yes, all right. If to be hospitalized, then they were hospitalized or operated on, and they received their treatment accordingly and as necessary. So what matters here is to deliver such services. And all these things are not only the words to utter, but are things we all need to be experiencing ourselves. And now we can see that our country has been adorned with city hospitals in many cities of our country, and we will build 5 more of them in the forthcoming days. And we will have built city hospitals for 30 greater municipalities, greater cities of this country. But the chairperson of the opposition party calls us to accounts. You would not understand much about it. What has been done is obvious for everyone to see. Such hospitals are under construction and are being built without a single penny coming out of the pockets of the state, so to speak. And right now, and so far, we have built and operated in the perfect fashion and without any without the slightest issue. Everything has been on track and functioning. If you were to build those only through the allocated budgets of the state, you wouldn't even be able to pay the interest rates, due interest rates. But now these are being built on the principle of BOT, built, operate, and transfer. And the credit lines provided are of the best. Now the Chamdapine and Sakura Hospital, for example, the financer of it is Japan. And the Prime Minister of Japan, Abe, also attended to the inauguration of the city hospital through a video conference, and he also was very happy to see it come to fruition. And we will see more examples as such in the forthcoming days. And about those 2 kids I mentioned before, they are called Derman and Yiğit. One is called Derman, the other is Yiğit, and they are on their way back home. They will be in our country on Wednesday, hopefully.
Yes, individuals worked also hand in hand to combat coronavirus. I am a TRT employee, and I wanted to say this. As TRT, we also took substantial steps against fight against coronavirus. We changed our programs and broadcasted certain old TV series. On 23rd of April, children could not celebrate Children's Day, but we had some celebrations on TV, and also remote learning is now a very important tool of the Ministry of National Education. And also healthcare professionals, their heroism has been reflected on our viewers' screens. We had some documentaries.
We also lost some healthcare professionals, many healthcare professionals. May they rest in peace. May the mercy of God be on their souls. All the healthcare professionals we have lost. And another nurse. A nurse could only see her child for a very, very short period of time, but then she also lost her life and passed away, unfortunately. May she also rest in peace. So this is what their share has been, as it turns out, the nurses or physicians. As you said, many people were not able to leave home on April 23rd, but people took to their balconies and recited the national anthem. And we did the same with my wife, as you know, as you all have all watched. Hopefully we will make up for what we have lost and go back to what things used to be and continue with our work on the streets and in every workplace.
Mr. President, I'd like to talk about economy. 80,000 Turkish citizens have been repatriated during this process.
My apologies. We talked about the fatalities, the death toll, but as you know, Northern Cyprus, Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. From Northern Cyprus, Dr. Fazıl Küçük's spouse, at the age of 85, passed away. May also rest in peace, and I would like to convey my condolences to the family and the beloved ones.
So I was talking about the repatriation of 80,000 Turkish citizens from more than 100 countries around the world, and someone just sent me a message. His spouse was sent back to Turkey from Odessa. They stayed in quarantine in Gölbaşı for 2 weeks, and they were offered 5 meals a day. So yes, critique is good, but let's also give due where due is worth. Turkish Airlines did a terrific job. From Sweden, we also brought in a citizen, and we talked to the family of the patient, and also we talked to the crew of the aircraft, and they said that we would see this happen in the past to guest workers in Germany or elsewhere in Europe. When they went to Sweden, people were perplexed and asked whether this was a very important person, and people were quite surprised when they found out that it was an ordinary citizen, and this goes to show how Turkey has changed over the years. Now, this pandemic is a global pandemic, and it has hit many countries around the world like a tsunami wave. And you talked about the US, 45,000 people lost their lives and applied for benefits from the state. Turkey, during this time, and I've witnessed this personally, the last increments of the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge was completed, and also dams are being built and completed in Turkey, and the Pine and Sakura Hospital, the Democracy Island, People's Gardens. I mean, all of these projects have been implemented. In 2008, there was a global crisis, and you said that the crisis would be tangential for Turkey. Some people made fun of that, but that's how it turned out to be. Now, what would you like to say about economy? Because our economy has stood the test so far really well, and Mr. Albayrak, who is the Minister of Finance, also worked really hard for this positive picture. What are your foresights into the future about economy?
First things first, the investments will never come to an end or a stop. We will continue with our investment activities as determined as we have always been. And by the end of this year, we will have inaugurated an additional 15 water dams. But also there will be some dams we will be groundbreaking for. You talked about the Ulusu water dam. Annually, we will be generating, hopefully, about 1.5 billion liras from it. And it will be serving for irrigational activities and as well for potable water. And this is going to be #1 in our country and #2 in the world in terms of its size, structural size. This goes the same for Ilısu Dam. We need to give it to it as well, because Veysel Eroğlu, with Veysel Eroğlu, we did the groundbreaking for the Ilısu Dam, and our colleagues asked us to name this water dam after him. So his name has been given to Ilısu, what used to be Ilısu Dam. So we are a country that attaches importance to the politics of service, if you will, and this is how we will pursue our journey. If people receive service from you, they will expect further service to come. This is very much natural. And another crucial area for a country is, of course, the defense industry. And in the field of defense industry, Turkey has been significantly leaping forward. Unmanned aerial vehicles and many other aerial vehicles, armed, for example, aerial vehicles, now are being manufactured in the country. Without those, we would not have maybe achieved what we have. But with the aerial vehicles, the unmanned or the armed ones, we could identify the coordinates, and the F-15s then could indeed hit the targeted spots. This was the case in the defense industry. And another field is, of course, the field of health. And we have now manufactured our locally designed ventilators. And we have received many demands, many orders coming from abroad as well. And now we have received about 60,000 orders placed for the locally produced ventilators. Now we have other, of course, great initiatives for the field of health. We will be establishing a Valley of Health. It will be
around the techno park? Somewhere else.
It will be in the vicinity of the Middle Eastern Technical University, but it will be separately located. But of course, we want to make a significant progress there too. In terms of vaccination and medication, we need to be self-sufficient and not be dependent on external bodies. We have some research and activities ongoing, for example, vaccines and stem cell related studies in many other fields, and hopefully we will be making our country one of those with the highest level of technology. We will also hopefully make our country one of the rising powers
In terms
of
of
the world.
macroeconomics, you have designated funds for low-income earners. Now there's a funding mechanism for strategic investments and new packages to give our economy a boost, and employment incentives as well. What are your foresights into the near future in terms of economy?
To put it simply, 5.5 million people during the challenging recent months, have received financial aid. We have delivered that financial assistance to them through VEFA social support groups. Now the opposition party is still questioning and asking what we have done. We are providing financial assistance to 5.5 million people of this country, and we do not expect a repay. And still they question what we do. We also have another activity. The Social Solidarity Foundation has been engaged in activities to deliver assistance or aid to those with lower income levels or those in need. and they do grant salaries for those with level incomes. And we have, as I said before, allocated 1,000 liras per month for 5.5 million people. And the Vefa social support team, as I said before, they deliver many essentials, supplies such as food to those in need. But on the other hand, in the field of economy, we have always generated more and more investment and have managed to bring our country in a good level in terms of the balances of assets and liabilities. In the second quarter, we will somehow face some challenges, but in the third and the fourth quarters, we will recover. And the interest rates, as you have observed, have been brought down to lower levels, and the inflation rates are falling. They are following an ever-falling trend, and these do positively, of course, affect our economy. And I also make a call to the investors and say now that we have lower interest rates and the state banks also are delivering support, now you can go ahead and invest. With their steps in the field of investment, we will come to better positions, hopefully.
Mr. President, now the entire world is beset by economic difficulties, and Turkey has announced many packages to minimize these negative implications of this crisis. We're talking about a global pandemic. What has been the impact of this pandemic on the Turkish economy? You've talked about the packages, but and also you've talked about loans for houses and for cars. But as soon as these were announced, some opportunists tried to manipulate it and increase prices overnight. Sadly, we also saw that happen. What would you like to say about these?
Tabii bu sahtekarlara, bu adeta soygunculara karşı şu anda başta İçişleri Bakanlığımız olmak üzere
The Ministry of Interior Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Finance, have been working on that very subject, and wherever they catch these networks of thieves, if you will, they will do what's necessary. There are some who are maybe time-serving, but what they will do will always be reprimanded for. And unfair price increases, when our citizens observe such an activity, they should inform the relevant authorities, and MASAK will start auditing and inspection for unfair price increases, because this is a sort of terrorism, and we will not give way for it. And we will also have established a council for unfair pricing. It will be auditing stockpiling and extreme price increasing activities by retailers, manufacturers, or enterprises. And if one is caught doing so, they will be fined. The public banks, as you know, have declared lines of credits, and they also have made announcements that they will not be providing those loans to those who opted for unfair price increasing.
Now, with your permission, I'd like to ask a few questions about global politics. The coronavirus pandemic has hit economies and privacy of individuals, citizens across the world, and some people are alleging that the world order is going to change. You also said something really important. You said that in the global order, Turkey is going to prosper in the future. After the Second World War, after the Cold War, certain mistakes were made. These will not be repeated. We will seize the opportunities that we will find in front of us. So what are the opportunities that you envision for Turkey? Will Turkey take even bolder steps in the future?
As I stated before,
veya üzerinde birçok çalışmaların yapıldığı alanların dışında birçok alanları
we
farklı bir şekilde değerlendirerek bunları fırsata dönüştürmeyi
have been
hedefliyoruz. İşte az önce
setting goals to turn many means into opportunities to seize for. And we have identified many specific areas that will offer us opportunities. As I said before, the field of health, for example, will be a point of attraction for our country. I had a call.
artık önlerini açın.
I spoke over the phone to Mr. Putin, and I said to him, your citizens are willing to visit our country. Now you should open up and let them visit our country. And now we have received the news yesterday, and Turkey has been included in their list of destinations allowed by the Russian authorities. And the previous day I had a conversation with Mr. Johnson, and I said to him, now you say that you're Turkish, but there are certain tourists who are willing to visit our country from the UK. You should let them, give them the chance. I said to him, so now they have included Turkey in their list. And now in Germany there's still some resistance against us. There's this coalition government still in office. How to say it, but there is a weird attitude adopted towards us, and in the forthcoming days we will have a meeting with a conversation, a chance to come in contact with Miss Merkel, and now for example, if I'm a member of a Schengen country, I should be allowed to visit. And I believe the talk we will have with Ms. Merkel will help us pave the way, because the field of tourism is an important point of attraction. Our country, for example, is by 99% of Muslims, but we are still a global country, and we have started our journey by saying the world is bigger than 5, and accordingly we put forward plans. What is this plan? It is as follows. No one has the right to say it's only me, but not the others. Because other than you, there are many other countries in the world. 196 countries in the world, not only you. Right now we, for example, have been experiencing this outbreak of coronavirus. Is there a difference among countries now? No. We need to see that. By way of seeing that reality, we need to grasp on the culture of solidarity. As long as we do not, we will be in loss. Because from our history, we have always had a culture of solidarity coming from our history. We have explained it to the entire world. We have delivered aid assistance to 102
Actually, they
countries.
confiscated each other's PPE.
Yes, the overalls, the masks have been confiscated. They were confiscated. And now we say that we have this principle coming from our past, our history, and this is how we embrace the whole world, and we lend a helping hand to the whole world, to the humanity, and we want the humanity to work with the same spirit, and we want the peace prevail and freedom prevail in the world.
Mr. President, instead of looking into our own world, you adhere to a view that's more open.
More sharing, more open, fairer world.
Yes, at the beginning of our interview, we said that we would ask you questions about your telephone conversation with the US President Trump. Now, let's talk about that, shall we? What topics did you discuss during this phone call?
Tabii bu akşamki görüşmemiz hakikaten
This phone call tonight was, of course, related with the most recent developments unfolding in the region.
saatlerinde bu görüşmeyi yaptık.
We made this call during the evening hours,
Libya
according to the local time. The first matter we addressed was the Libya issue. Of course, they are curious about the developments unfolding in Libya, and we accordingly shared the most
şu anda
recent
başarılı bir durumda
developments in Libya and expressed that we are
tabii aramızda
expressed where we are standing, and he confirmed that we are in a successful position in managing the situation. We made some jokes, but still
gelişmeleri anlattık.
he basically asked about what the most recent situation is like,
Birleşmiş
and we
Milletler'in
said
tanımış olduğu Sarrac'ın
that the United Nations has recognized Sarraj, and Turkey supports the UN-recognized government of Sarraj, but against him there is the coup-maker Haftar.
yer alıyorsa yer alsın.
And no matter who stands with Haftar, we will be
İtibariyle de
standing against them.
birçok yer geri alındı.
Accordingly, we said. And many places, many locations have now been reclaimed. Sarta, Sifre, Çufra, these are vital locations, if you will, and Tarhuna region was another important region.
Biraz kuzeyinde havalimanı.
And to the north of Tarhuna,
Evet, Fatih'e.
an airport, Fatih airport is located. It was an important place, and this region has also been taken back. And if you will, it faces almost all the way up to Tunisia, a corridor leading up to Tunisia, and these areas have come now under the control of Sarraj. Of course, the fact that these areas have come under the control of Sarraj has made Haftar go crazy, so to speak, and now Nusrata has also been taken, and there are some activities ongoing to take Sirte.
Şurada gördüğünüz gibi bu önceki durum.
This is the before picture,
Böyle değil.
but it is not anymore as such.
Nusrata
This is where Misrata is, and a certain portion of Sirte. These areas have been reclaimed, and Tripoli
havaalanının
is
alınması meselesi var.
at a more
Bununla ilgili çalışmalar
is in a more convenient position.
gayretle
In this area, we have also operations ongoing. The target is
çevresini tamamen
to take the vicinity, the surrounding of Sirte completely and deal with that matter. These are the areas where the oil wells are located, therefore are of great importance. Once dealt with, the city will be at ease. And here by the shore,
kuyuları
there are natural gas wells,
arz ediyor.
therefore are of importance, great importance, these areas.
Kuyuların olduğu
And here, these areas downwards,
burası. Bunlar da önem arz ediyor.
these are also
Şeyi rahatsız ediyor.
are of importance, but That disturbs Russia. Haftar does not have such a concern. He's only a coup maker. He takes all his power from Russia.
Sir, regarding Libya, there are so many questions that we would like to ask, but there are so many players here in the country. But of late, the balance is shifting. Coup plotter Haftar is losing ground, just like you stated previously. Batia, Trablus Airport, and Sirte, Tarhune are now changing hands. Now, from a chronological point of view, can you explain to us well, actually, we have prepared a video as to how things have evolved in Libya. Let's watch that and then we will continue.
Okay, we'll take a brief break from that interview there. We have, of course, been listening to our sister channel, TRT Haber's interview with President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan in Turkish. He's just begun speaking about Turkey's strategy in Libya and also his phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump, whom he seems to have more or less support from in Turkey's role in Libya. He, of course, reiterated the fact that warlord Khalifa Haftar is now on the back foot, and the government of national accord, backed by the United Nations, that Turkey works in cooperation with in Libya, is now making advances with Turkish help, of course. Well, let's take a look at a map now. So we can see some of the advances in Libya. We can see they've made some significant gains pushing back warlord Khalifa Haftar's militia. They have retaken control, of course, of Tripoli and are now moving toward the strategic coastal town of Sirte. Meanwhile, though, the European Union has rejected a ceasefire proposed by Egypt for Libya on Saturday. Egypt, a close ally of warlord Khalifa Haftar, announced that Haftar supports Cairo's call for a national ceasefire. That, however, was rejected by the government of national accord. Let's return now to this interview in progress with President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan.
Is the legitimate government, and then there is Haftar. But many countries like Russia, UAE, Egypt, and France are supporting him, and also mercenaries are on the ground in Libya. Some countries, through mercenaries, are supporting Haftar, and they've been withdrawing recently. But nevertheless, that has been the case. Thanks to Turkey's initiative, the equilibrium has changed. You talked about your conversation with President Trump. Support for Haftar. Do you think this support will continue, especially on the part of big actors?
After the call we made tonight, we might see a new era to take start in between the U.S. and Turkey. Because during our talk, we have come to terms about certain issues. There could be new steps to be taken. And of course, I will also have to talk to Mr. Putin, and I will, about Cairo summit. The participation of Russia is crucial. The Abu Dhabi administration, France's involvement of Jordan. These negotiations or meetings did upset us. But the fact that Russia was involved went beyond everything, because they made certain statements back in time that they had deployed no soldiers, but still they had about 16 aircrafts stationed in the region. This is basically what the situation seems like. Hence, we would like to address those issues to see what steps we might take forward
Mr.
after all.
Turkey's initiative in Libya changed the entire equilibrium with the two MOUs signed in 2019. The civil war's course changed, and the UN-approved National Accord government, like you have said, made great strides. But of course, well, as you have said, with the states, with Russia, negotiations are still underway. Haftar, the coup implementer Haftar, do you think he will still be a part of this equilibrium in a political transition?
According to me, and as the developments indicate, Haftar can any moment be pushed out of the process. This is what the developments indicate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding your phone call with President Trump, there was an announcement from your office regarding Syria, YPG, PYD, and how some of these groups were the instigator behind recent developments in the U.S. They're called Antifa, but they are working hand in glove with many terrorist organizations. So could you enlighten us about that, please?
He expressed that he himself was aware of this issue and was going to demand further information from his colleagues. And he said after we could make another call. And he said he knew about Antifa.
Was he aware of Turkey's contributions and warning?
No, he has not still been provided with reports specifically about it. There are also some names from FETÖ group. We shared the names of these people with him, and he said that he will receive reports accordingly and inform us then.
Now, regarding Libya and regarding the MOUs that were signed, there was a blockage that Turkey faced in the Eastern Mediterranean regarding energy resources. Greece, southern Cyprus and France. And regarding these territorial issue or this frustrated certain plans that would put pressure on the Antalya Gulf, and Greece made some incendiary comments, and former Prime Minister said that the way out of this would be negotiation with you, Mr. President. So how has Turkey defended its strategic position?
Here is the picture. Here you can see the position of Turkey in terms of maritime jurisdiction. And it is obvious that Turkey will not make any compromises, will not compromise slightly. Anyone wise can tell that. In the past, we neither had drilling ships nor seismic studies. But thank God we have 3 drilling ships and 2 seismic exploration vessels, and now they are operating in this area. And one of them, PARTİ vessel, has now been sent off to the Black Sea, and this vessel will be exploring accordingly. So such developments make other parties disturbed, because these vessels are coming with all auxiliary means and ferrigates. But some countries like Greece do not stop to utter blank words. You should know your place and put your things in order. Otherwise, it is obvious what will Turkey do. And now in northern Cyprus, 2 mosques have been
vesaire filan. Bir taraftan geliyorlar Yunan bayrağını, öbür tarafta geliyor bir tane paça var,
on the
oraya asıyorlar filan falan. Bu tür şeyler yapıyorlar.
instigations.
Şimdi siz bunları
Now they have
yaptığınız zaman
placed some
karşılıksız kalır.
Byzantine flags and some rags and whatsoever. But if you do such things, do you think it will go unanswered?
Şimdi bu sefer de kalkıyor.
Now you do things and you expect us not to respond.
Ayasofya ile
And now they are telling us not to convert Hagia Sophia into a mosque.
idare ediyoruz.
Are you the ones who administrate Turkey, or is it us?
Ha, bunun yetki sahipleri bellidir.
Top it all off, we have institutions, state institutions operating in Turkey. We have the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, all the relevant institutions, and the decisions will be made in line with the laws and rules, and they will not be needing your permission
Bakın bugün işte
or
Sayın
permits,
Bahçeli
and the
açıklama yaptı. Şimdi bu
body
şey
of
gösteriyor.
execution
Demek ki bu ülkenin
has now
ileride
been
tutuşan
sharing the future possible acts,
ise
but
şu anda
also the opposition party leader
devleti olarak Danıştay'ın
stepped in and
vereceği
shared
kararı
his opinions, and
Danıştay kararını
we expect, of course, the resolution, the ruling by
bu adımlar da ona
the
göre atılır.
Supreme Court, by the Council of State, by the State Council, and then upon the resolution of the Council of State, we will see clearly what the step will be.
Atılan ve atılmakta olan
And here we see the maritime jurisdiction, but on the other hand, there is the
enerji ve tabii
issues.
kaynaklar
There are
Bakanlığı'yla
issues related with the
yaptığı çalışma.
overland operations and MOUs.
Onlar da çalışmalarını
The Ministry of Internal Affairs
In Libya, right?
gönderdik. Onlar da çalışmalarını
is now
o çalışmalar üzerinden de
going to pull together studies for the jurisdiction of the over-the-land activities.
Mr. President, this MOU regarding oil reserves in the Mediterranean has upset certain countries. Now, Turkey is going to explore energy in Libya. 7 license areas have been designated. When is this going to be kicked off? Can you give us some ideas about the calendar, please?
göre onun yani timingi
The timing
gelişecektir.
might turn out to be
Vardıktan sonra
different than expected
bir şekilde atılır.
as per the developments.
And Kanuni is going to be sent off to Libya, right? The Kanuni vessel.
Devam ediyor.
Sir, also in Libya, actually, and Idlib as well, Turkish drones have exhibited a great performance in counter-terrorism, as you have stated, or against the Assad regime or the Haftar regime. Turkish drones have achieved great success, and they have featured in global news outlets as well. Certain comparisons were made with other such products. So are you expecting demand from other countries regarding these drones?
SİHA'lara yönelik çok ciddi siparişler var.
About the armed unmanned aerial vehicles, there are many orders placed,
Geliştirmede başarı sağlansın.
and I guess
Şimdi tabii bu Akıncı
it is even hard to meet all the demands, all the
özel sektörde olan bu
orders
firmamıza
placed so far for the purchasing.
büyük şeyler var.
There's a private company engaged in
Devletin attığı adımlar var.
the activities,
Bunlarla birlikte inşallah
of procurement, and the state authorities also have been progressing. Hopefully, we will have stronger steps taken forward in the production and the manufacturing
Yes,
phase of
regarding
such
maritime
vehicles.
jurisdiction, in the map that we have shown, we see that some countries were trying to bypass Turkey and bring energy without the approval of Turkey. But now, I think people are understanding that without Turkey's green light, it is not possible to do this exploration in the Eastern Mediterranean. During your phone call with Mr. Trump regarding S-400s or F-35s, have you had a discussion?
It was not raised in our agenda, but we have
Those
established
working
some
groups have been set up.
Yes, during our phone call with Mr. Trump, we set those working groups up. The Ministry of Interior Affairs, Intelligence Agency, National Intelligence Agency, and the Presidential
Mr.
Office.
President, now yet another topic that has been on our agenda, Idlib Spring Peace Spring Shield. Now, an agreement was signed regarding Idlib, and the M4 highway is really critical, and there was a discussion about a safety zone around the highway. Can you give us some highlights about the recent state of affairs in Idlib? Are you seeing the results that you expected?
Currently, what we call M4 on this route, yes, from time to time some problems emerge, but so far things have not gone bad, and things have been working out fine. About 110,000 people from Idlib have so far been repatriated. But of course, to the north of the region, we have constructed brick houses, dwelling houses, if you like. Houses, maybe small places for families, places of 30 to 40 square meters each, but enough for a family to accommodate in. The armed forces and other relevant institutions and companies are now working to build as many brick houses as possible. We now have set a target to construct about 50,000 of those houses, and once we do so, it will be a relief for the people of Idlib. And our officials also have informed us these dwelling houses will make things easier for the people of Idlib, for the people of the region. As stated before, it is a big trouble to endure, an ordeal. God forbid. No matter how grateful we are, it will still not be suffice to express our gratitude to God, because many people from the region really have faced a lot of suffering. Now, as I said before, we are building those houses to give some peace of mind to the people of the region.
One nation, one state. It sounds like a slogan, but actually we see how important it is. In order to make better use of time, another topic that we would like to discuss with you is the recent events in the States that is causing ripples all across the world. A black man was killed by police officers, and the protests spread to states, many states in the US and other countries around the world. Let's watch our brief video and then we will continue.
Okay, we have been, of course, watching the continuing interview with President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan of Turkey, speaking there to our sister station, TRT Haber, in Turkish. Now, he just started to address the issue. They cut to a brief video there, speaking about the events of the past week in the United States, the past 2 weeks, actually, following the death of George Floyd at the hands of police. Now, the now former Minneapolis police officer accused of Floyd's murder appeared in court via Videolink. Derrick Chavan has been charged with second-degree murder, and his bail has now been set at $1.25 million. We'll tell you more about that. We're going to return now to the interview and see what President Erdoğan has to say about the events in the United States.
So we have been discussing this topic. I'm sure you have watched the footage as well. This black man called George Floyd was killed, and anti-racist protests took place, but certain looting incidents and violent incidents also took place. What did you make of these incidents, and did you talk about this with your counterpart when you had a telephone conversation with President Trump?
The fact that George Floyd lost his life due to an inhumane act of restraining was upsetting. This is what I expressed during our talk with Mr. Trump. Of course, this is the manifestation of a racist act. It is never something that a human being with conscience can accept in the slightest way, because he is pressing his knees on his throat, even though he is screaming that he was unable to breathe. And this is not something ordinary or regular to see. And we see, on the other hand, such acts being adapted against the black or some other races. But we, as the Muslim people, do not make any discrimination among people, no matter from what religion or color of skin they have, what religion they come from, or what ethnicity they come from. But in some countries, in the European countries and in the USA, these racist behaviors, attitudes are known by many. And we, during Mr. Obama's term, had good days. But during his term of 8 years, what sort of steps did he really take towards meeting the needs of the black people in the USA? Of course, the attitudes about culture here come to the forward. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said the black is not superior to the white, and the white is not superior as compared to the black. And this is a principle we have adopted long centuries. What kind of an attitude is this? How can some treat another one as such? Upon the death of George Floyd, of course, the protests in the U.S. Spread across the country and even spread across the world.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. SETA General Coordinator Burhanettin Duran, thank you very much. Sabah Daily, Okan Müderrisoğlu, thank you so much for answering our questions. There were so many important topics on our agenda. And this broadcast is broadcast in English, German, and in Russian as well on all our platforms. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your answers.
I also would like to especially convey my thanks. Of course, on the other hand, we should not forget the issue about PKK and YPG and their connection with this terrorist organization based in the USA. I talked about it during our phone call with Mr. Trump, and I asked for his sensitiveness about the subject.
Previously, you issued similar warnings as well, and now it has the terrorism has struck the U.S.
Yesterday comes, and it will be striking back at you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I would like to thank you very much, and I would like to extend my greetings.
Yes, we had this
and
exclusive
regards to
interview with our
citizens
president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. Thank you so much for being with us. Good evening. Goodbye.
And there you have it. That was our sister channel TRT. TRT Haber interviewing Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan at the presidential palace there in the Turkish capital, Ankara. A lot of territory covered, but it began with talking about Turkey's management of the coronavirus pandemic. After months of lockdown, of curfews, Turkey has finally ended those measures. They feel their approach has been successful, and we have seen the numbers drop rather dramatically in Turkey. He spoke about the hospitals that have been opened, Turkey's unique approach to fighting the pandemic. He then, of course, went on to address other issues, not least Libya and Turkey's cooperation with the Government of National Accord based in Tripoli, its offensive or defensive, rather, against warlord Khalifa Haftar, and the progress that has been made in their advances retaking the areas occupied by Haftar and his militia. He spoke of Syria. He spoke as well of the events of the last 2 weeks in the United States. And he also engaged just before this interview in a phone call with President Donald Trump to talk about those events, as well as cooperation possible cooperation, I should say, in Libya, as well as a warning that Turkey gave the United States about the correspondence between some certain violent elements of the protests in the United States and those associated